Joey and I had been inseparable for as long as I could remember. It wasn't something we ever talked about. It was just understood. If there was a team list, our names were side by side. If there was a bus ride, we ended up in the same seats. If there was a joke, we were either the ones starting it or the ones laughing the loudest. People expected us to come as a pair. Coaches trusted it. Teammates relied on it. Even the younger guys watched us like we had something figured out that they didn't yet. Maybe we did. Or at least that's what I used to think. Tournaments were always my favorite part of the season. Not just the games, but everything around them. The long rides, the noise, the stupid arguments about music, the shared snacks that somehow disappeared way too fast. And the hotel rooms. Those were always chaos. Guys everywhere. Bags thrown around. Someone always yelling. Someone always laughing. Joey and I had shared rooms more times than I could count. Sometimes beds, too. It had never meant anything. At least, not before. This tournament was different from the start. Bigger city, bigger crowd, and apparently worse planning. By the time our coach got us checked in, the hotel was packed, completely full. We were standing there at the front desk when the lady behind the computer gave us that look. The kind that already meant bad news before she even said anything. "I'm really sorry," she said, glancing between us. "There's only one room left." Joey shrugged. "That's fine." She hesitated. "It has one bed." We both paused. "One," Joey repeated. She nodded, apologetic. We looked at each other for a second, then both shrugged at the same time like it didn't matter. Because it didn't, right? "We've done worse," Joey said casually. "Yeah," I agreed. But when we got up to the room and actually saw the bed, I realized he hadn't been entirely accurate. It was small. Not just a little small. Actually small. Joey let out a quiet breath. "That's tight." No kidding. We stood there for a few seconds, neither of us saying what we were both thinking. Then, like always, we defaulted to the easiest answer. "Whatever," he said. "Yeah, whatever." The room was freezing. The heater barely worked, and the air had that cold, empty feel to it. We climbed into bed from opposite sides, both of us trying to settle in without acknowledging how close we actually were. For about 10 seconds, everything was still. Then Joey yanked the blanket toward himself. "Dude," I muttered. "Seriously. I'm cold." "So am I." We started pulling it back and forth like kids, half serious, half laughing. The bed shifted under us as we wrestled for space, bumping into each other, elbows knocking, shoulders brushing. At one point, he leaned over me to grab more of the blanket, and for a second we froze. Too close. Then he backed off like nothing happened. "Stop stealing it," he said, like that had been the issue. "You're the one stealing it." We went back and forth like that until we both gave up, settling into an awkward truce. We tried sleeping facing away from each other at first. Didn't work. Every time one of us moved, the blanket shifted, letting cold air in. Every few minutes, we adjusted again. It turned into this silent, stubborn battle of comfort. At some point, exhaustion won. I fell asleep. I don't know how much later it was when I woke up again, but something felt different. Took me a second to figure out what it was. Joey had rolled over. His arm was draped across me, heavy and warm, like he had just settled there without thinking. His breathing was slow and steady behind me, like he was still completely asleep. For a moment, I didn't move. It wasn't weird. Not really. We'd been close like this before after long games or road trips. It was just warmer, easier. I told myself that was all it was. Still, I stayed awake longer than I should have, staring into the darkness, aware of him in a way I hadn't been before, of how close he was, of how natural it felt, of how it maybe shouldn't feel that natural. Eventually, I drifted off again. When I woke up the next morning, everything was back to normal, or at least it looked that way. Joey stretched, yawned, made some joke about the room smelling terrible, like nothing had happened, like the night hadn't been different. I laughed it off, because that's what we did. But something stayed with me, all day, through warm-ups, through games, through the noise of the team joking around in the lobby later that night. I couldn't stop thinking about it, about how close we had been, about how it had felt. Joey, on the other hand, acted exactly the same, laughing, talking, completely unbothered. If he noticed anything had changed, he didn't show it, which somehow made it worse. By the time we got back to the room that night, the air between us felt quieter. Not awkward, just different. We got ready for bed without much talking this time. No wrestling over the blanket, no jokes. Just small movements, both of us aware of each other without looking directly. I lay there on my side, staring at the wall, trying to convince myself everything was normal. Trying not to think about last night. Trying not to think about him. The silence stretched longer than it should have. Then I heard him shift slightly behind me, and his voice, softer than usual, careful in a way I had never heard before. So, did you like it? For a second, I thought I misheard him. My chest tightened. What? I asked, buying time. He didn't laugh, didn't brush it off. I asked, did you like it? I didn't turn around. Couldn't. My mind started racing all at once. Did he mean the closeness? Was he joking? Or was this the moment everything between us changed? I should have answered him. That was the first thought that hit me. Not later. Not after I'd had time to think. Not after I'd replayed his tone 100 different ways in my head. Right then. But I didn't. Instead, I hesitated just long enough for the moment to slip out of my hands. I mean, it was whatever, I muttered finally, keeping my voice casual, like the question hadn't landed somewhere deeper than it should have. We were just trying to stay warm. Silence. I could feel it more than hear it. The space between us stretched tight. Then Joey let out a short laugh. Yeah, he said. Right? Just that. Just that. He shifted onto his back, pulling the blanket with him like he always did, like nothing had changed. But something had. I could feel it. We didn't say anything else after that. Not for a long time. I kept my eyes open in the dark, staring at nothing, replaying the moment over and over. So, did you like it? What had he meant? Was he talking about how close we'd been? About waking up like that? About... No. I shut that thought down immediately. He was joking. He had to be. That was the only explanation that made sense. Except, it didn't feel like a joke. And that was the problem. I must have slept at some point, but it didn't feel like real sleep. More like drifting in and out of half-thoughts and unfinished dreams. The next morning came too fast. Joey was already up when I opened my eyes, sitting on the edge of the bed, tying his shoes. About time, he said lightly. You almost slept through breakfast. Yeah, I muttered, sitting up. Didn't sleep great. Same. We didn't look at each other when we said it. That was new. The rest of the team was already in the lobby when we got down there. Everything looked normal, sounded normal, felt normal, except it wasn't. Not for me. I noticed him too much. That was the first thing. Not in the way I used to, like noticing where he was on the court or whether he was open for a pass. This was different. Smaller things. Quieter things. The way his voice changed when he was focused. The way he pushed his hair back when it fell into his eyes. The way he stood a little closer to me than anyone else. Things I'd never paid attention to before. Or maybe I had. Maybe I just never let myself think about them. During warm-ups, I caught him looking at me. Not just a glance. A pause. Like he was about to say something. Then someone called his name, and he looked away. I told myself I imagined it. I told myself a lot of things. He's your best friend. This is normal. You're just overthinking it. Except I wasn't sure anymore. During the first game, everything felt slightly off. My timing, my focus, even my reactions. I missed things I normally wouldn't. At one point, I fumbled a pass, and the ball slipped right through my hands. Hey, Joey said quietly when we regrouped. You good? Yeah, I said quickly. Just tired. He didn't look convinced. You sure? I said I'm fine. Came out sharper than I meant it to. He raised his hands slightly, backing off. All right. But he kept watching me. That was the thing. He kept watching. Even when he was supposed to be focused on the game, I could feel it sometimes. That split second longer than usual. That extra attention that didn't used to be there. Or maybe it always had been. And I was just noticing now. After the game, we ended up sitting next to each other on the bus back to the hotel. Like always. Except this time, neither of us said anything. Usually we'd be talking about the game, arguing about plays, joking about something stupid someone said. Now it was just quiet. Our shoulders brushed once when the bus turned. Neither of us moved away. Neither of us said anything. I stared out the window, pretending to be interested in the passing streets. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. Maybe he was joking. Maybe I imagined the way he said it. Maybe I wanted him not to be joking. That thought hit harder than anything else. I swallowed, shifting slightly in my seat. What if I ruin this? The question came out of nowhere, but once it was there, it didn't leave. What if I say something wrong? What if I read this wrong? What if he didn't mean anything by it, and I'm the one making it weird? I clenched my hands together, trying to push the thoughts away. Next to me, Joey shifted too. "Hey!" he said quietly. I turned my head. For a second, we just looked at each other. Too long. There was something there. Something I couldn't quite name, but I felt it. In the way he hesitated. In the way his expression softened, like he was about to say something real. "Yeah?" I asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Nothing," he said, shaking his head slightly. "Forget it." Something in my chest tightened. "No, what?" He hesitated again, glancing around like he was checking if anyone was listening. "I was just gonna..." "Yo, Joey." One of the guys from the back of the bus leaned forward, cutting him off. "You got that charger you said you'd bring?" Joey leaned back with a sigh. "Yeah, hold on." The moment disappeared just like that, like it had never been there. I turned back toward the window, trying to ignore the frustration building in my chest. But I couldn't, because for the first time, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. I didn't just want things to go back to normal. I wanted to know what he was going to say, and that scared me more than anything else. The weird part was that nothing had officially changed. Joey was still Joey. We still lined up beside each other, still threw each other looks across the court, still ended up drifting back to the same spaces without thinking about it. If anyone else had looked at us, they probably would have said everything was normal. But it wasn't. Not to me. The tournament kept moving, game after game, the schedule tight enough that I should have been focused on nothing except keeping up. Instead, my attention kept circling back to him like it had developed a mind of its own. It was never anything big. That was what made it worse. Joey remembered I hated the blue sports drink the hotel kept giving us and wordlessly handed me the red one at lunch before I even asked. He noticed when I was rubbing my wrist after a bad landing and said, quietly, "You're not hiding that as well as you think." He shifted over on the bench to make room for me when there was already enough space, somehow still ending up close enough that our knees touched. And his voice changed now when it was just the two of us. I didn't know how else to explain it. Around everyone else, he was still easy, loud, quick to joke. But when the room quieted, when it was just him and me for even a few seconds, his tone dropped. Softer, more careful, like he was testing the weight of every word before he let it go. That should not have mattered as much as it did. But it did. By the third day, I had become painfully aware of how often I was looking for him without meaning to. On the court, in the hallway, across the hotel lobby when the team was scattered around half asleep and complaining about breakfast. And I had started noticing something else too. Jealousy. I didn't even realize what it was at first. Just this sharp, stupid irritation when Joey laughed too hard at something one of the other guys said. Or when one of the seniors slung an arm around his shoulders and kept him talking while I stood there pretending I didn't care. It was ridiculous. Joey was my best friend. He was allowed to laugh with other people. He was allowed to exist outside the invisible circle I had apparently built around him in my head. But knowing that did not make the feeling go away. If anything, it made it worse. The first time I noticed the same thing in him, it caught me so off guard I nearly forgot what I was saying. We were downstairs in the lobby after dinner, and one of the guys from another team had started talking to me near the vending machines. He was easy to talk to, funny in an effortless kind of way, and I was only half paying attention anyway. Then Joey walked up. He didn't interrupt exactly. He just stepped in closer than he needed to, handed me the snack he'd bought without asking what I wanted, and looked at the other guy with a politeness that felt just slightly too stiff. "You good?" he asked me. It was such a normal question that nobody else would have heard anything in it. But I did. "Yeah," I said slowly. Joey nodded once. "Coach wants us upstairs in 10. That was not true. I knew it wasn't. He knew I knew it wasn't. The other guy said something like, "All right, see you around," and drifted off. The second he was gone, I looked at Joey. "Coach wants us upstairs?" Joey shrugged. "Eventually." I stared at him. He looked down at the vending machine buttons like they were suddenly fascinating. "What?" I almost smiled. "Almost. Nothing," I said. But it wasn't nothing. It sat with me the rest of the night. Later, when most of the team had disappeared into their rooms and the hotel had gone mostly quiet, I found myself unable to sleep again. Joey was in the room showering, and for some reason the sound of the water made the walls feel too close, the silence too loud. So I stepped out into the hallway. At the far end, near the ice machine and the vending machines, Joey was already there. He had changed into a hoodie and sweats, hands shoved into the front pocket, like he'd also needed air. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then he glanced at me. "Couldn't sleep?" I leaned against the wall across from him. "Could ask you the same thing." He smiled faintly, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Fair." The hallway was quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the vending machine and the occasional muffled sound of a door closing somewhere farther down. Joey looked at me for a long moment, then down at the floor. "Can I ask you something?" My chest tightened instantly. "Depends." He let out a quiet breath through his nose, almost a laugh. "That bad, huh?" "Maybe." He nodded slowly, like he was working himself up to it. Then he said, carefully, "Have you ever liked someone you couldn't really say out loud?" The question hit me so directly that for a second I forgot how to breathe. I looked at him, really looked at him, and there was no teasing in his face. No joke. No easy way out. He was serious. I could have answered then. I could have told him the truth. Maybe I already was. Because maybe the truth had been there longer than I wanted to admit. Maybe that was why every glance felt heavier now. Why every accidental touch lingered. Why the idea of losing him had started to feel unbearable. But fear hit just as fast. What if I ruin this? What if he doesn't mean it the way I do? What if one honest answer breaks something we can never fix? So I swallowed and looked away. "Maybe," I said, trying for casual and failing. "I don't know." Joey was quiet for a second. Then he nodded once, like he had expected that answer and hated it anyway. He shifted his weight, eyes still on me. "Do you think friendship can survive honesty?" That one hurt even more, because it wasn't a random question. It wasn't hypothetical. It was standing right there between us, asking to be named. I opened my mouth, closed it, then forced out, "Depends on the honesty." His expression changed at that. Not much, but enough. Something flickered there, something raw and almost hopeful. He took half a step toward me, and I felt it immediately, that dangerous pull of the moment, the sense that one more word would change everything. Then a door opened down the hall. Voices spilled out. One of our teammates laughed too loudly about something. The sound snapped the moment in half. Joey stepped back first. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess it does." Neither of us moved for a second. Then I pushed off the wall and said, "We should probably get back." "Yeah," he said again. We walked to the room side by side, close enough that our shoulders almost brushed, but not quite. That was the worst part. We were closer than ever, and somehow all at once farther apart. Because now I knew the distance between us wasn't about space. It was about the things we were both too afraid to say. The thing about jealousy is that it makes you honest in the worst possible way. Not out loud. Not in any brave, admirable way. It just strips your excuses away until you can't keep pretending you don't care. I learned that the hard way. It started small, the way all the worst things do. We were in the hotel lobby between games. Half the team sprawled across chairs and couches, everyone tired enough to be loud about it. Joey was standing near the front desk talking to one of the girls working with the event staff. She couldn't have been much older than us, maybe our age, and she kept smiling at him like everything he said was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Joey smiled back. Not in a big way. Not in a flirty movie scene way. Just normal Joey. Easy, warm, effortless. And for some reason, I hated it. I looked away immediately, annoyed at myself for even noticing. He was allowed to talk to people. He was allowed to smile. He was allowed to stand there being exactly who he had always been. So why did it feel like something inside me had gone tight? One of our teammates noticed me staring and smirked. "You should go save your boyfriend." I laughed automatically because that was what I was supposed to do. Shut up. But the joke landed wrong. Not because it embarrassed me, because it didn't feel ridiculous enough anymore. That was the problem. Later that afternoon, a guy from another team started talking to me while we were waiting outside one of the courts. He was friendly, asking where we were from, what position I played, making the kind of easy conversation you make when everyone's stuck in the same tournament bubble for a weekend. I answered him. I even smiled. And the whole time I could feel Joey somewhere nearby. I didn't look at him at first. I didn't want to. But when I finally did, he was sitting on the bench with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it had personally offended him. When one of our teammates said something to him, Joey answered too sharply, then muttered something under his breath and stood up. That should have made me feel better. Didn't. It made everything worse. Because now there was no way to pretend I was the only one acting strange. For the rest of the day, Joey was off, distracted during drills, quiet when everyone else was talking, sharp around the edges in a way that wasn't like him. Sometimes he avoided looking at me completely. Other times, I caught him watching me when he thought I wouldn't notice. Every time our eyes met, one of us looked away first. And every time, it felt like losing a tiny, stupid battle no one else even knew we were having. By then, I had started telling myself a new version of the story. Maybe he regretted all of it. Maybe that night in the hallway had been a mistake. Maybe his questions had meant less than I thought they did. Maybe he had seen the hesitation on my face and realized I wasn't worth the risk. The thought sat heavy in my chest, making everything else harder. So I did what any smart person would do when they were terrified of being hurt. I pulled back. Not in some dramatic, obvious way. Just enough to protect myself. I sat farther from him on the bus. I answered in shorter sentences. I laughed with other people more. I stopped looking for him first. And every second of it felt awful. That night after dinner, the team gathered in one of the common areas near the elevators. People were sprawled around with snacks and sports drinks, replaying highlights from the day, arguing over bad calls, telling the same stories they always told. I should have been able to blend right into that. Instead, I saw Joey across the room with two teammates and one of the event volunteers. He was smiling again, head tipped back slightly, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen around me all day. Something hot and immediate twisted in my chest. It hit me so hard I had to look away. And that was when I knew. This was not confusion anymore. It was not curiosity. It was not me being weird because we'd had one awkward, too-close night in a hotel bed. This was jealousy. And jealousy meant I already knew what I felt. The realization should have brought relief. Some kind of clarity. Instead, it just made me panic. Because if this was real, then I had way more to lose than I'd wanted to admit. I got up and left before anyone could ask where I was going. I ended up out near the side exit, leaning against the cold wall with my hands shoved into my pockets, trying to breathe through the mess in my chest. I heard the door open a minute later. Of course it was Joey. "Seriously?" he said. I didn't turn around. "What? Don't do that." I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Do what?" He stepped closer. I could hear it in the way his shoes hit the concrete. "Whatever this is." I faced him then. His expression was tight, frustrated, and somehow that only made my own temper flare. "You're the one acting weird." His eyebrows went up. "I'm acting weird?" "Yes." He stared at me for a second, like he couldn't believe I'd said it. You've barely looked at me all day. Maybe I was busy. With that guy from the other team? He shot back. The words landed between us, sharp and immediate. I blinked. What does that matter? His jaw tightened. And there it was again, that feeling that we were standing on the edge of something we might not survive. Why are you acting like this? He asked, quieter now, but somehow more intense. I folded my arms, more to hold myself together than anything else. Why do you care? His face changed. Not much, just enough. Enough that my heart started pounding. You know why, he said. The air left my lungs. For 1 second, I thought he was finally going to say it. I thought maybe this was it. The moment everything would stop circling and finally become real. But fear got there first. Don't, I said quickly. His whole expression shut down. Don't what? I shook my head, already backing away. Forget it. Right? He said, the hurt in his voice turning hard. That's what you always do. That stung because it was true. I wanted to tell him to stop looking at me like that. I wanted to ask him what he meant. I wanted to say the thing sitting right in my throat. Instead, I said nothing. He looked at me for one more long second, then stepped back and pushed the door open. Fine, he muttered. Forget it. And just like that, he was gone, leaving me standing there alone with the sick, certain truth I could no longer pretend not to know. I wasn't scared because this was getting complicated. After the argument outside the side exit, everything between Joey and me went cold. Not loud, not dramatic. Honestly, that would have been easier. It was quiet. That was what made it unbearable. The next morning on the bus, he took a seat 2 rows ahead of me. Nobody else would have thought anything of it. Guys switched seats all the time. But Joey and I never did. Not unless one of us was sick or coach made us move for some reason. This time, no one made him. He just sat somewhere else. I stood there for half a second longer than I should have, staring at the back of his head like maybe he would turn around. Maybe he would grin and tell me to quit being dramatic. Maybe he would slide over and make room like always. He didn't. So I sat down next to someone else and spent the whole ride feeling like a part of me had been left standing in the aisle. That was the worst part of it. He was still there. Still in the same hotel, same team, same games, same crowded hallways. But his absence followed me anyway. I felt it every time I looked up and didn't find him beside me. Every time I almost made a comment and remembered I had no idea how he would take it now. We still spoke, if speaking was what you wanted to call it. You got the tape? Yeah. You going down to breakfast? In a minute. Short replies. Flat voices. No eye contact if we could help it. And every second of it hurt more than the jealousy ever had. At least jealousy had fire in it. At least that had meant something was still alive between us, even if neither of us knew what to do with it. This felt like losing him in slow motion. I started replaying every moment that had led us here. The bed, his question, the hallway, the way he had looked at me and asked if friendship could survive honesty, the way I had kept stepping back every time the truth got too close. I regretted all of it, not because it had happened, but because I had let fear turn me into someone smaller than I wanted to be. Someone defensive, careful, cowardly. I should have answered him honestly the first night. I should have told him what I felt in the hallway. I should have said something outside that door instead of letting him walk away. Now it felt like the cost of all that silence was standing right in front of me, and I still didn't know how to fix it. Joey did not look any better. He was trying harder than I was to pretend everything was fine. But I knew him too well. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened when people joked around him. In the way he stared out windows too long. In the way he answered everyone else normally and then went clipped and careful with me, like every word had to be measured so it would not cut too deep. Twice I caught him looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Twice he looked away so fast it felt like a slap. By the last afternoon of the tournament, the whole trip had started to feel unreal. Everyone else was talking about heading home, about school waiting for us, about sleeping in their own beds again. Bags were being repacked. Coaches were checking lists. The temporary world we'd been living in was already starting to come apart. And all I could think was that if we got on that bus tomorrow like this, something between us might stay broken. That thought lodged itself so deep in me I could barely breathe around it. Late that evening, after the final game and the final team talk, I ended up back in the room alone for a few minutes while Joey was downstairs helping one of the guys carry equipment. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the floor, at our bags, at the cold little room that had somehow become the place where everything in my life tilted sideways. When Joey came in, he stopped near the door. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he walked past me and started folding one of his hoodies with too much focus, like it required his full attention. I stood up because sitting there felt impossible. "Joey," he kept folding. "Don't." That one word emptied the room. I swallowed. "Can we just talk?" He laughed once under his breath, tired and humorless. "We've had chances to do that." I had no answer to that. He finally looked at me then, and whatever was in his face hit harder than anger would have. He looked exhausted, hurt, like he was trying very hard not to let me see either one. "Maybe we should just forget all of this," he said. I don't think he meant to say it cruelly. I think he meant it like surrender, but it landed like a blow. Forget all of this. Forget the way the air changed the second he asked that question. Forget the nights of not sleeping. Forget every look, every almost confession, every terrible moment of realizing I cared too much and too late. Forget him. And that was when I knew, finally and completely, that I couldn't. I couldn't go back to before. I couldn't pretend this was nothing. I couldn't lose him and call it easier. Because the truth was bigger now than fear. I did not just want my best friend back. I was in love with him. The thought did not come gently. It arrived all at once, sharp and undeniable, like something inside me had stopped fighting to be named. I loved him, not in some vague, confused way. Not because of one bad weekend in a hotel room. Not because we'd gotten too close and made things messy. I loved the way he remembered what I hated drinking without asking. I loved the way he always noticed when I was hurt before anyone else did. I loved how every room felt steadier when he was in it, and emptier when he wasn't. And I had almost let him walk out of this trip thinking none of that was real. Joey picked up his bag. That movement snapped something in me. He was not leaving this room with that sentence being the last true thing between us. He was not walking away with silence again. I crossed the space between us before I had time to talk myself out of it. "Joey, wait." He stopped. His hand tightened around the strap of his bag. But he didn't turn around right away. Outside, rain had started tapping softly against the window. The room felt smaller, quieter, sealed off from the rest of the hotel. Like the whole world had narrowed down to this one moment and what I did with it. When he finally looked back at me, his expression was guarded, almost braced for impact. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say yet. I just knew I couldn't let the silence be the ending. And when he saw that I was serious, really serious, he slowly set the bag back down. Neither of us moved after that. The rain kept falling outside. The room stayed quiet. And for the first time, it felt like we were standing on the edge of the truth with nowhere left to run. Joey set his bag down, but he still didn't say anything. He just stood there across from me, shoulders tense, eyes locked on mine like he was waiting to see if I was really going to do this or back out again. For a second, I almost did. Not because I didn't know what I felt anymore. That part was suddenly painfully clear. It was everything else that scared me. The years behind us. The history. The risk of saying something out loud that would change the shape of my life the second it left my mouth. But then I looked at him, really looked at him, and I realized something that hurt almost as much as losing him. He looked scared too. Not angry, not done, scared. And somehow that made it easier to breathe. "You didn't ask me that as a joke," I said. My voice came out rougher than I meant it to, but at least it was steady enough to be understood. Joey didn't answer right away. He just looked down for half a second, then back at me. "No," he said quietly. "I didn't." The room seemed to go even stiller after that. Rain tapped softly against the window. Somewhere out in the hallway, a door opened and closed, but it all felt far away. Like the whole hotel had faded out and left just the two of us in the middle of something that had been waiting too long. I swallowed. "Then why didn't you say that?" He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, except there was nothing funny in it. Because I was trying not to make it real. That hit me straight in the chest. Joey rubbed the back of his neck, eyes dropping for a second before he forced himself to meet mine again. I kept thinking if I said it too clearly, if I actually admitted what I meant, then that would be it. His voice got quieter. If you didn't feel the same, I'd lose you. There it was. No joke. No half-step backward. Just the truth. I stared at him, my heart pounding so hard it felt impossible that he couldn't hear it. How long? I asked. He huffed out another soft, nervous breath. I don't know. I almost smiled at that because it sounded exactly like him. Honest but still stumbling. Then he tried again. Long enough that I stopped knowing what was normal and what wasn't. His mouth twitched like he hated how vulnerable he sounded. But he kept going. Long enough that every time we were close, I noticed it. Long enough that I started wondering if you noticed it too. I felt my throat tighten. Because I had. Maybe not at first. Maybe not in a way I wanted to understand. But somewhere along the line, Joey had stopped being just the person who was always beside me and started becoming the person I looked for in every room without even thinking about it. The person whose silence could wreck me. The person whose attention could undo me. The person I loved before I knew what to call it. I noticed, I said. My voice came out barely above a whisper. Joey's eyes searched my face, like he was afraid to believe me too fast. I took a step toward him. Then another. I noticed, I repeated, stronger this time. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, or making it weird, or that if I said anything, I'd ruin everything. He nodded immediately, like that made perfect sense to him because it had been living inside him too. I know. There was a pause then, but not the bad kind. Not the kind full of distance. This one felt fragile in a different way, like we were both standing inside the truth now and trying not to move too fast in case it broke. I looked down for a second, then back up. When you said maybe we should forget all of this, I stopped, trying to get my breathing under control. That messed me up more than I want to admit. Joey's expression changed instantly, pain flashing across it. I didn't mean it like that. I know, I said. But it made me realize something. He waited, and this time I didn't let myself run. I don't just want my best friend back, I said. That's not what this is. His eyes widened slightly, and for one terrifying second I thought maybe I had still gotten it wrong somehow. Then I saw his face soften. Not with surprise. With relief. I'm in love with you, I said. The words left me shaking, but the second they were out, I knew I would never want to take them back. Joey closed his eyes for a moment, like he needed a second just to feel them land. When he opened them again, there was something unguarded in them I had never seen so clearly before. I thought telling you would make me lose you, he said. I laughed once, weak and breathless, because that had been the whole tragedy of it, hadn't it? Same. That one word seemed to break the last of the tension between us. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough that the air changed. Enough that Joey stepped forward too, until there was barely any space left between us. For a second we just stood there like that, close enough to feel the warmth of each other, both of us breathing carefully like we still couldn't quite believe this was real. Then Joey lifted a hand, slowly enough to give me time to stop him if I wanted. I didn't. His fingers brushed my arm first, gentle, almost uncertain. Then he rested his hand there fully, grounding both of us at once. I've wanted to do that without wondering if I was about to ruin my life, he said softly. I smiled despite everything. That bad? He gave me a small, shaky smile back. Worse. Something in my chest eased for the first time in days. Maybe for the first time since this whole thing started. I moved closer until our foreheads touched. It felt natural in a way that almost made me laugh at how hard we had both fought it. All that fear, all that distance, and this quiet closeness felt more like us than any of the silence ever had. Joey let out a slow breath, and I felt it between us. So what now? I asked. His hand slid down until our fingers caught. Now I stopped pretending. I tightened my hand around his, Good, I whispered. He leaned in then, hesitant only for a second, giving me every chance to choose this too. I did. The moment was soft, careful, and real in a way that made everything else fall away. Not rushed, not desperate, just honest. When we pulled back, neither of us moved far. Joey rested his forehead against mine again, still holding my hand. I'm not losing you, he said quietly. You're not, I said, and this time I believed it. The trip that was supposed to be just another tournament had changed everything. Not because we almost ruined what we had, but because we finally stopped hiding what it had been becoming all along. The rain kept falling outside, steady and soft against the window, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel panicked by how close Joey was. For the first time, being close to Joey did not feel confusing. Felt like coming home. If your best friend suddenly asked you, "Did you like it?" would you be honest? Or would you stay silent to protect the friendship? Have you ever had feelings for someone you were scared to lose? Tell me your story or your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you even a little, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more emotional stories like this.